Yeah. Yeah.
Welcome YouTube, this is Sergeant Whoday, and today I wanted to take a moment to respond to Geoff's latest video over at sportscardinvestor. He posted a video last night on his YouTube channel titled, "Is it time to panic?" And I have that video here in the background, and if you haven't watched it already, it's definitely worth a watch. I would highly recommend that you go out and you do watch it. He just came back from really a hobby meeting out in Las Vegas, it sounds like. And there was some concern amongst some of the hobbyists, amongst some of the investors, and some of the distributors, and just a lot of the larger individuals that are in this card collecting hobby. And so he created the video. He posted it last night just to give some of his thoughts and to share those. And this video is going to be a little bit of a response to some of the things that Geoff had to say in his video, but also just a little bit of my own insight. I have not been in the hobby as long as Geoff has been in the hobby, but going into my own investigation today, just to kind of get a feel for where things are going to be heading with change within the hobby industry with Fanatics. Buying out Tops and what's looking like they are going to be purchasing Panini as well. What we can expect as collectors, as flippers, as investors. Whatever niche of the market that you're in, what are some of the things that we can expect? And so, again, with the video that Geoff put out there, I have to say is really good information. I certainly agree with where he is at. And I spent some time even reading some of the comments that people had in the video as well. And some things, I found very interesting. One, based off the comments, nobody's freaking out. Everybody's saying, this is great. I was expecting this. Geoff is talking about a downturn in the card collecting industry, which I think we all kind of knew was coming. Whether that be, just from the economic conditions that we're all currently being faced with and or will be facing here in the very near future, or if it's just some of the overall transitions in the hobby in itself. For a while there, we were, high prices, low volume, or so we thought in the retail industry. Obviously, it was being, taken. Flippers were a large part of that, which in some respect are really your LCSs. Unfortunately, not all of them, but some of them. But the one thing I did notice is that nobody's scared. Everybody's still wanting to collect. Everybody still enjoys the hobby. They love the hobby. So personally, I don't see the demand really diminishing. I think that you will have some individuals who are going to pull back a little bit maybe on their investments if they are taking that more investment approach. But we will see prices maybe come back down to normal. We will see some transitions in the market as far as how long things take to sell and things of that nature. But I certainly think the demand will always be there, and Geoff does touch on that in his video, and I think that again that he does a very great job doing that. But the other thing I wanted to point out too was that I think it's interesting the number of collectors within the chat that were calling out, flippers, and it's almost like there's this divisiveness within the card community where collectors, they're not really big fans of the flippers, and they kind of put them in the corner and things of that nature, and I understand that to a degree. But in the same breath, I think one of the most important things that we can take away from this transition in the industry is that collectors need flippers and flippers need collectors. The demand that the flippers and the breakers and the investors the demand that they get from the manufacturers is what allows better products to continue to hit the market and for improvement in the industry to continue to occur that the collectors are able to enjoy. In the same breath, flippers can't make money, um, you know, nor can they be successful in their industry without the collectors as well. So I don't think it needs to be an either or, and I don't think we certainly don't need to be divisive over the issue of those that are in it just to invest, those that are in it just to be flipping, and those that are in it to collect because they love it. Collecting in itself, and again, I'm a collector of many different things, primarily coins and cards, but collecting in and of itself is driven by the desire of an inherent value in something that individual is acquiring. So um, there has to be some relative value into what the individual is collecting. I'm not saying that it necessarily has to be monetary. I fully understand that some people actually enjoy collecting, and the value in and of itself is the joy that they get out of it. My point being is that I think the industry in general, and any industry in general, when it relates to the hobbies as far as collecting and things of that nature, would see a deterioration in the number of people that were in it and also the product available if there was no value from a monetary perspective behind what people were collecting. So again, I think from the comments that I read, they were all very good. I'm not trying to, say that, call anybody out at all in general, except for this simple fact that, collectors, you do need flippers, and flippers, you do need collectors. So, let's move forward together with these changes that are taking place. Another thing, again, and I alluded to this, previously, and we're going to jump into, and we're going to talk about, what role is Fanatics going to be playing as, these transitions start to occur. So we're going to transition over, and we're going to talk about Fanatics just a little. All right, everybody, so let's talk a little bit about Fanatics. So obviously a lot of you guys probably already know that Fanatics has acquired Topps, and they are planning on acquiring Panini as well, from what everybody's been talking about, from what everybody's been saying. We believe it's just a matter of time. We thought that it maybe would have happened by now, but we have not seen that yet. So again, we think that is something that is to come, but just has not happened yet. But what is interesting and what has been noted that Rubin himself, so Michael Rubin, the CEO and chairman of Fanatics, and let's go ahead and pull him up here so you guys can see who we're talking about. Michael Rubin of Fanatics has already came out and stated that on CNBC that he plans on having Topps maintain its branding name. So I know that for a lot of individuals, this is something that was of concern. Topps has obviously a lot of nostalgia there. A lot of people have been collecting, cards for a long time, and the Topps brand is probably one of the most, actually, it is the most recognizable brand in the sports card industry. And so that is something that I think that it was a huge relief to myself. I'm assuming it's probably a huge relief to a lot of you guys as well. That Topps will maintain its branding on its sports cards. Fanatics is just has acquired them, and so a lot of that distribution and a lot of the designs and maybe some other implementations will be taking place there, which we'll talk about here in a moment. Rubin also has a very strong desire for a direct-to-consumer approach, and we've already seen major distributors, major distributors be released. And so, from what I've heard and from what I've read and what I've listened to Michael Rubin talk, it sounds like he's wanting to take more of like a Amazon approach to this type of environment when it comes to the sports cards industry. And I think that it's interesting. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, it certainly will provide better value for the end collector. I do have just a little bit of reservation there when it comes to stopping a lot of those distribution channels, because I do believe that there is a place and a purpose for our local card shops. I think those LCSs serve a part of the community and bringing people together. Especially, I mean, that's what the hobby is all about, is, bringing people together that share a common interest. And when you have a local card shop in your community that is providing the service to those hobbyists and those collectors, it creates an environment of a community. It creates an environment where people can come together and not have to talk about all the things that are going on in the world and just sit back and enjoy a hobby. And if you get too crazy with the distribution channels and trying to really implement that direct-to-consumer approach as Amazon has done, it would be disheartening and it would be sad to see some of those local card shops not be able to maintain their business, because that is a big aspect of this industry, is the community. So I appreciate the aspect in that he might be trying to cut out the middleman to potentially save the end user some money, and also the same breath make additional money for himself, because there's not markup upon markup, and he can acquire that own markup on his own when he takes it directly to the consumer. But I hope that he just keeps in mind the community behind the card collecting industry, and what it means to us. Again, that there's more to be seen there, and I do believe that Michael Rubin, from what I've seen, he seems like a very genuine person. I do not believe that he is somebody who is going to, be operated by greed, so to speak. And so I think that I have a positive outlook on this, but I do find it to be interesting in that approach they have already come out and said is going to be a direct consumer approach for the most part. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute as we get into Josh Luber as well. And so Josh Luber, he is a part of the collectibles arm of Fanatics, and this is where I think it gets pretty interesting in regards to the vision that we are maybe all anticipating and wondering, what's it going to be like underneath Fanatics? What is the industry going to look like when Fanatics takes over? um, Panini and all these licensings come into place, and now they essentially own the whole entire industry because, um, there no longer will be really any competition except for maybe like you have Sage and Leaf, some of the smaller companies. But I mean, Fanatics will have all the rights, and again, they'll have two of the biggest companies under their umbrella. So let's talk a little bit about Josh Luber. So Josh Luber, pictured here, is the co-founder and chief visionary officer for Fanatics Collectibles. In his profile, this is where I think it gets really interesting. He came over from co-founding and founding two different companies. So one is StockX. So this is considered to be the stock market of all things. So you have apparel, you have the shoes, the hats, collectibles, so cards, things of that nature. So kind of an environment for individuals to be able to buy, trade, and sell different aspects of things. The other company, which is the one that I find to be most interesting, is Zero Cool. So he's the founder of Zero Cool, and Zero Cool is a card collect or is a card company mostly around pop culture. So let's go ahead and transition over to Zero Cool, and we'll talk a little bit about them. All right. So, what is Zero Cool? So, we are currently on Zero Cool's website. Again, this is the company that Josh Luber himself, the chief visionary officer for Fanatics, started. And so, this is a pop culture trading card company. And being the chief visionary officer for Fanatics, I'm assuming that a lot of the same principles and kind of thought, consideration that he has taken within the Zero Cool website has a high probability of being implemented over in the Fanatics acquisition of Topps and potential acquisition of Panini. So let's sit there. Let's first talk a little bit about what exactly is that they're trying to do differently. So first one is the culture. So he talks a little bit about working with the inspiring creators and leaders and brands, top of the industry, most influential. So talking a little bit about their culture. The next two are the ones that are probably the most interesting for at least for me, as far as what does this mean for sports card collecting moving forward. So this one, equal access, this goes hand in hand, I believe, with some of the distribution. With some of the distribution changes that we've already seen occur with the acquisition of Topps and some of those distribution changes that many are anticipating. So they plan on creating auctions that create a level playing field where everyone has the same access to bid on our products. There's no preferential treatment or unfair advantage. If I was to read into this, I would insinuate that that means that everybody, LCS, collector, breaker, whatever it may be, retailer, wholesaler, has equal access to the products that are being dropped. I don't know how they would potentially implement this with Topps and Panini in the sports card industry, but I do know that it's been talked about a lot, and so I find this very interesting that this is certainly a core value that Josh Luber had for Zero Cool, and they implemented, and they are currently implementing as we speak. The other one is fair pricing. You set the price, not Zero Cool. This is a true market-based pricing. and a blind Dutch auction that everyone pays the same price for the same product, and almost everyone pays less than their bid. So I think some of us are familiar with that Dutch auction aspect of it. It's an interesting way to incorporate some fair pricing. And again, I appreciate the end consumer aspect of all of this. Again, as I mentioned before, my only concern is with the local card shops. How are we going to make sure that our mom and pop shops that help instill community, gatherings within the cities that we live in, that they are able to be successful as well. So now let's jump into the product a little bit. So we talked a little bit about the distribution and some of the values that they have over at Zero Cool. But let's take a look at their most recent product release. So the most recent product release was with Jackass trading cards. And so we're going to look into a little bit of the quality as well as the printing and the quantity of what they did. So their first release they had was with V Friends, where they made 1,000 boxes, each with 10 cards, and they sold 800 of them. For Jackass, they produced 10,000 boxes, each with 50 cards, and they sold 9,500 of them through the same process. That's 10,000 cards compared to 500,000 cards. So why the big difference? And they go on to talk a little bit about how they're just kind of playing around and tweaking with the numbers to try to find the right level of production to kind of help meet the demand of the market, but also to create a more affordable product that people can appreciate. Now, initially, that may have you concerned, but as we go down to the value aspect of it, I think you guys will appreciate the approach that they take next. So, no guaranteed hits, no guaranteed autos, not all chrome cards, no relics at all, but a collectible box with hits. So they mention it. It's not a conventional product, and it isn't. And so the approach that they took here is that none of the boxes had any kind of guaranteed hits. They didn't have any guaranteed relics or anything of that nature. And they debated whether or not that collectors would even notice this or they even cared. And essentially, regardless of how we felt, that's the way they decided to move forward. So I think that they're going to listen to the market, obviously, because they're in the business of making money. But this is just the approach that they took with this product. And I find it interesting because this sentence, I think, means the most to me. We strongly believe that autos and hits should be limited to protect the long-term value of trading cards and ensure the sustainability as the overall category grows. So in their production and their thought process behind this, they have the long-term sustainability of the industry in mind. And you say of the industry when it comes to Jackass cards, and they talk about that. The Three Stooges cards, look at their values, right? But I'm most interested in this from the sports card perspective, and if this mentality is carrying over, we already know that many of us have had concerns around print numbers and parallels and same pictures and sticker out, like all these things. The quality aspect from the Topps to Panini has gone downhill. And so having somebody come in to be of the mindset of long-term sustainability of the value, not even necessarily of the hobby, but the value of the cards, I think is really cool. So we go down and talk about the autos in themselves, and there was 192 cards that had autos out of the 500,000. Now that is between Steve and Johnny, and I think some other characters as well. I don't know that for sure. If you do know, please comment down below. But that's not a lot. And again, that goes hand in hand with that long-term sustainability that they talked about. So that to me is interesting. Obviously, what creates the most rarity and most sought out after aspect in the sports card industry is the limited quantity of it, the rarity of it. And so, creating that rarity and being conscientious of that rarity off the get-go is a huge add-on, in my opinion. The other thing that I thought was really cool, and this ties in with the quality that we talked about just a little bit, is that they were very focused that they were all on-card autos. Sticker autos have no place in the industry, in my opinion. The relics that are not affiliated have zero place in the industry, in my opinion. I mean, I opened up a box of 2018 Donruss Blaster on my channel recently. I pulled a Josh Allen relic card just from 2018 at a blaster that was at that point in time $20, and it was affiliated with the player. Today, that same blaster is twice the amount if you're fortunate enough to find it in a retail location, and that relic would not be affiliated. Stickers and non-affiliated relics have zero place in the industry. It's a watered-down product, and it is entirely unfortunate that companies like Panini and Topps would increase the cost on the end user and devalue the quality of those products. And so I'm excited that they, have put that much effort, and they even call it out here in this blurb that, they believe that it should all be on card autos. This is also interesting. There wasn't one redemption. Man, how awesome would that be? No redemptions. I would. I'd also, I almost take this a step further and wonder, would there be no more Panini points? Like that would be, no more Fanatic points. That would be great too, right? So I mean, it sounds like they have a very quality focused mentality over at Zero Cool. And again, Josh Luber is on the visionary team for the Fanatics team. So I'm not saying all these things are going to be transferred over, or they're going to, be related over to the sports card industry. But I just think that some of it absolutely will be discussed. All these items, I mean, he is a part of that visionary team. All of these items will be discussed. I can guarantee you that. And how or whether they will be implemented, time will tell. And from the relics perspective, and they talk about it here that it's not that they are against them. It's just with the type of branding with, Jackass and things of that nature, they didn't have the relics. And from an FDA perspective and all that kind of stuff, you can read the blurb. But they didn't incorporate them into that product. So it's not that they don't have them. They just didn't incorporate into that product. The boxes, I find this to be pretty interesting. They actually made the boxes a collectible in themselves as well. So they foil stamped the Jackass logo on each one to where they could add hits by changing the foil color. So they had, 5,000 silver boxes, essentially 2,500 red, 1,500 green, 900 purple, 50 black, 10 gold, and one cracked ice box. One of one cracked ice box. So that's pretty interesting. I think that's pretty cool as well. So maybe, again, a little bit of an add-on to the aspects of, some of the collectible sports card industry of what they could do. Anyways, those are some insights that I had. I wanted to share this with you guys today. I was doing a little digging myself, just wondering, how's this all going to play out? Like, who are these key players that are going to be making these decisions? What's their background? What does it look like they are wanting to do, and where they, what's the vision that they have for the sports card industry moving forward? I understand that there could be, a lot of anxiety around some key players in this. I mean, from the distribution perspective, unfortunately, if that is an aspect of your business, it sounds like that could be very at threat right now. And from a local card shop perspective, there's a lot of uncertainty around there. There's a lot of uncertainty in the industry in general. There's certain things that we can't control, like the economy. When it comes to the economics aspect of it, and a potentially looming recession, like how are you going to protect your investments in your hobby? And again, as I mentioned before, I understand that not everybody is in this from a purely investment perspective, but there are those that are. And again, we all rely upon each other, because if one didn't exist and it was only the other, the quality would then suffer as well. So as we move into some uncharted territory with these different acquisitions, and also from an economics perspective, let's continue to build with each other. Let's continue to to dive into this and listen to some of those thought leaders that are out there in this industry, and see where this takes us. I'm just getting started here on YouTube. I hope that you consider giving me a follow. I hope that you subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, please give it a like. I hope to continue to produce more, industry news, and engaging material as it relates to breaks and different player profiles. But we're just getting started. So showing your support means a lot to us. But also continue to stay engaged. And like I said before, I would highly recommend going over and checking out Jeff's video on Sports Card Investor. He does a phenomenal job as far as laying out some of the concerns and also some strategies that he thinks would be beneficial for those of us that are in the industry to implement as we move forward. Anyways, wherever this takes us, we all know that it can be a fun hobby. So, let's be responsible. Let's look out for one another, and let's continue to have fun with this. I'll see you guys next time. This is Sergeant Whodey, and I thank you for listening.